Welcome to another Sober on a Drunk Planet podcast. And today we have Moni, who has been on one or two of the podcasts before. And she is sober for over 6 years now in Las
Yeah,
Vegas. And you're currently melting in 111 Fahrenheit. Is that right? You do Fahrenheit, don't you?
that Fahrenheit. Yep.
You got air
Yeah,
conditioning.
yeah. Thank God for air conditioning, and thank God for all the fans that we have around the house, because we're literally melting and crispifying over here.
And there's me moaning about sort of 28 degrees, which is probably about 82 Fahrenheit.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, beautiful weather out for us.
yeah, we're saying it's not hot enough. Um, so it's great to have you on again. Just to give people a bit of context, we knew each other before I did the books,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you I was sort of learning to do yoga, and you were brilliant because you were also training to do your yoga at the time, I think. So we just helped each other out via
Yeah.
Zoom during COVID. Um,
Mm-hmm.
because we had similar interests. You're into all your exercise stuff. I was retraining as a personal trainer. I
Yeah.
was doing like a short form of yoga called Broga in the UK. Still don't like that name.
Virgo.
Yeah, it's a really crappy name. But it was a really good form of yoga. I've actually not done any yoga since I qualified. um,
Oh,
just because I was in bits for days because we were basically 2 days, 10-hour days of
yeah.
downward dog, and my whole body just died after that, I think.
Baking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you got your 6 year chip in May. You live in Las Vegas. And yeah, really, I think just a short recap of why you got sober, how you got sober. You go to
Yeah.
NA and NA, just a little bit around that.
Yeah.
Sort of give people an idea of what is available in Vegas, because most people would be like, you can't get sober in Vegas.
Right.
But
Right.
you obviously can, because you're testament to that. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's just talk a bit about then. So just bring people up to what was the decision to get sober?
So, I wanted to get sober in 2018. And I got in, or my mom took me to a rehab in Mexico. And there I stayed for 3 months, and I came back, and I uh, gave myself a little bit of a pep talk and told myself that I would remain sober for me for the first time. And I think that that's why I'm still sober in the Sin City. Um, because I want to stay sober for me, first and foremost, and I wanted to show people other ways of sobriety, other ways that they can come and be in recovery and still have fun, because I thought that sobriety didn't have to be you know excruciating pain and crying, and there's got to be some kind of rainbows and butterflies and glitter somewhere in there. And I started to notice that drinking was fun until it wasn't, and then sobriety itself wasn't fun until it started to get a little bit of fun. And I started accomplishing things. Like you said, I got my yoga teacher training. I studied kettlebell techniques. I studied Pilates. I studied different things in the fitness industry that really helped me to stay sober and stay focused on them instead of focusing on other things. But while I was doing that, I built up a little bit of stress and things like that. And I didn't do yoga for those 3 months almost, while I was going through a big depression and a big change at that. But I've I've gone on retreats, I've done meditations, I've done different things that have helped me. But it's a journey. It's a constant different battles every day. So
Yeah, I think we were talking a couple of years ago, so we were both about 4 years sober, and I was
yeah.
personally going through really stressful life things that happened.
Yeah.
Not necessarily bad things, like you wouldn't say they were disastrous, but moving house, we got a new puppy. It's something I haven't
Uh,
really spoken about, the puppy, but we rehomed the puppy because at the time in our lives, April was going through depression and stress at the time
yeah.
as well. And yeah, it was a Romanian rescue puppy, and it was just on top of the new house in April, and I was going through stress because I went from the personal training to writing the books. The books
Yeah.
almost, ironically, sent me back to drinking and drugging again,
Oh
um,
man.
because of the stress of just having to get them, and the income side of things wasn't there.
Yeah.
Being an author, and yeah, so it was
Yeah.
stressful, and I dealt with mine badly because I overate. So while I'm
Mm,
sober from drink and drugs, I could probably say that the overeating and the binge eating, and a big
yeah.
thing for me, and I think we've spoken about it before, but when I'm eating that type of food all the time, your gut health's bad, your vagus nerve is impacted, and you just know yeah, it does get a bit depressive because of the food
Yeah.
that you're putting into your body as well. Because I know that they're things that we've related to in the past as well.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, like food is one of those things that like especially since um uh I don't want to trigger anyone, but I got really, really depressed for a while, and food was my only thing, and I felt like I could never get full. Like I would eat and I would eat a good meal, and I felt like I was still hungry, like I could eat another meal and I could eat another meal, and then I would grab another plate and I would grab another plate, and so like I know the binge eating is it's there, and um it takes over sometimes because it feels like for me personally it feels like there's like an empty spot that like I cannot feel um for me. That's just for
Yeah,
me.
and to be honest, I can relate to that, um, because there's no need to eat that amount of food,
Yeah,
and it's similar to drinking. I didn't need to drink 10 pints of cider. I didn't need to
true,
snort 5 grams of cocaine. Um,
true.
but there is that healing process that needs to go on to sort of plug those imaginary holes, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so I think that this is important to talking about depression because we
Yeah.
said before we came on that things have been going well. There are parts of our sobriety that are 10 times better than when we were drinking and drugging by the end of it. Again, there was
Hmm.
times when drinking and drugging was fun. I'm
Yeah,
not here to deny that it was a miserable existence from day one. It's just
right.
I didn't have an off button, and that with age takes its toll, and led to suicidal depression for me. So it's something
Mhm.
that I understand. My other half, she deals with it from time to time as well,
Yeah,
with medication, and yeah, life just happens. I mean, I think the one thing for sobriety for me is that when I'm starting to feel depressed again, because I went through a big depressive hole last year, I
hmm,
go to therapy. So I get a therapist, and I
yes,
stay with a therapist for as long as I need to until I've spoken about it and healed and looked at bits of my
right.
past that might be triggering. That's how I deal with it. I know people go to AA and NA, which we'll get onto in a minute because I think it's important that you highlight those. But for you personally, because I know about your dad who passed away, and then you mentioned about your uncle as well.
Yeah.
So these are things that you've dealt with. Was it a year ago, or maybe long? Yeah,
Yeah, a year ago. So like me and my dad from the beginning, like when I was growing up, we always didn't see eye to eye. So I always wanted a relationship with my dad, but my dad was very macho, and so when I got sober for 2 years, those first 2 years, I moved in with him because he was getting knee surgery, and I was like, I'll help you, and I'll come to the house, I'll help you, and like you'll be fine, everything will be good. So I did that, and I got to meet my dad again as a sober person, which was totally different. And it was like nothing I thought it was. My dad was a great guy. And he 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 would let me, like, because we were during quarantine, everything was closed. He would let me cut his hair. He would let me do his eyebrows, like just silly things that like little girls do with their dad.
Yeah.
I got to do with my dad, and I got to do it sober, which was like the most it was really a great gift to be able to do it sober. And he one day he passed away, and I didn't take the time to grieve properly. I just took it as, okay, my dad passed away. He's in heaven. Everything's gonna continue. Life is still continuing. Work is still calling. I'm still, scheduled at work. I still have things I gotta pay. Bills are still coming in. And I just kind of kept pushing, and I kept pushing, and I kept doing more yoga classes, and I kept doing more things to try to distract myself. And within like couple months after that, one of my uncles in Mexico passed away. And so like everything just kind of started happening, and I was having a lot of grief coming in. And I just kept going, and I just kept going, and I kept adding more stress and more stress and more stress to what I was already going through, instead of saying no, not right now. Saying no to things for me is a little hard, because I always want to be there, and I want to do my best, and I want to show my best. But sometimes you just have to step back and literally take in what is going on in your life. And then that spiraled me into a depression, and I was depressed for quite a while, for like maybe 4 months, 3 months. And I started medication. I did talk therapy. I did these things because I know that there's help for everyone, and everyone's journey is totally different. And medication and talk therapy, I recommend it to everybody that needs it, because mental health is such a sensitive topic that, like, you can literally your life is on the line at times when mental health, like, I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, well,
But
to be honest, is the reason why I retrained as a counsellor, because I personally benefited so much from my addiction counsellor when I was in rehab, um,
right.
that it completely changed my life. Because I was very much a macho man. I was very
Yeah.
much the man that would never talk about his emotions, mainly because I didn't know how to. So then that adds a layer of stress, because you've got all this stress that you don't know how to release. But then when I was in rehab, I had to talk, and even group therapy with a
Yeah.
bunch of other nutters. But I felt quite freeing for the first time, where I actually said what was on my mind, because being a typical bloke that just drank in a pub to get rid of his emotions, it suppresses those emotions, which turn into stress, I believe. And I think
Yeah.
it's a bit like you saying that you didn't grieve. You were too busy doing stuff, whereas you just needed to sit, even if it's in a room on your own for a week, and thinking about
Hmm.
those family members, thinking about all the good times that you had, and understanding that they're not going to be there. That's what you
Right.
need to do, and you need to sit there. Now, obviously,
Yeah.
it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when your uncle then passed away, that was the sort of, your body's already stored all this stress, and then
Hmm.
that extra layer of stress, because you haven't handled or healed your dad's passing, it's
Yeah.
just then been too much for you.
Yeah. It was like the camel that broke the back. Yeah. The straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah, and it's relatable, because we're not perfect just because we don't drink or drug. Um,
Right.
but I think the self awareness of understanding, similar to me, cross addiction into binge eating, like that is
Hmm.
something that I've only in the last year and a half sorted. And that binge eating was at the end of my last depressive episode,
Yeah.
because they're related. Um,
Same.
yeah.
Same.
So it's very important to talk about depression, because it can still happen. Like, at the end of the day, we try and talk positively, but you also have to be mindful that life happens. And if you've never been in a position before where you've had to grieve your own parent and your uncle,
Yeah,
you don't have those skills. They're not
I
something
don't.
we're innately born with.
Right.
So, like you said, talking therapy is brilliant. I mean, they're maybe not like a counsellor where they'll go digging in to childhood trauma, which is more, I don't know, more for getting over drug addiction. Why do you drink or drug in the first place? Let's look at your childhood. Da, da, da.
Right.
But a talking therapy for grief is brilliant because you're then able to actually go through that grieving process by talking it. Um,
Yeah.
and talking therapy tends to be a bit cheaper than the full counsellor.
Yeah.
Not knowing how did you get talking therapy in Vegas? Just in
Uh,
case there's Americans listening who might.
yeah. So I went to Human Behavioral Institute. It's here in Las Vegas, and they help people with mental health, mental illnesses, and they also do teenagers as well. Like if any teenagers are listening, and um, but I went there and I began talking to my therapist, but I did it over the phone just because I was so depressed I couldn't leave. There was days that I couldn't even leave my room. I couldn't leave my bed. Like I would wake up and it'd be another day. Um, I got pretty bad. And so I started doing talk therapy through the phone, and I started doing medication, and it helped a lot, especially talking about it, because we don't realize how how certain things and certain emotions come out, especially with grief. I didn't realize I was angry for some reason. I was very angry, um, and there's stages of grief that we have to go through, and I was just very angry. I was angry that uh, that he left and didn't come back, or you know and things like that. But I know that they're not true because I've talked it out already. And I know that that's not what happened, or whatever, because our minds sometimes like to make up stories to things that we don't understand, or we don't realize, or don't know, because it likes to connect certain things anyways about the brain. um and so for me, it was just like I was just very angry, and blah, blah, blah. The talk therapy itself helped me to navigate that anger without having to go off the wheels or off the rails, or say screw it, this isn't working, or whatever. But it really helped me to navigate those feelings that um I didn't know what they were, some of them. But it was just, it's such an amazing experience to have, especially when you have mental illness. Just to have talk therapy, even if it's over the phone, it still gets the same result, you know?
Yeah, I think that's important to highlight as well, is that there's no right or wrong way to grieve, but obviously having talking therapy helps you actually take action on the grieving part. So actually doing something to try and heal.
Right.
But I know from being depressed that sometimes picking up a phone or even going on Google when all you want to do is just sit in bed all day for days on end, it feels like the hardest thing to do. Um,
Yeah.
and it's so difficult. I think that's why it's important as well. Like you mentioned medication, because I've been on sertraline, I think, before, um, which was to try and help me get out of bed a bit more, so I'm not as depressed. Now, there's
Yeah.
various medications for this, that, and everything that can speak to your doctor
Yeah.
about, but that you went on medication as well.
Yes, I'm on something called the Abilify, and it's an injection. So it's good for a month. And it helps with like depression, really bad depression that I got. And it they had to start increasing my medication every 2 weeks, in order to get the dosage, because everybody's different. Like I said before, everyone's so different that some people might need lower, some people might need a little bit higher. It just depends on where you are. But for me personally, I had to increase every 2 weeks just because it wasn't helping, until at the dose I'm at now. Now that it is helping, it's way better. So
So do you feel like you're not lying in bed for as long? You've got a bit more get up and go.
yeah, I feel more like I'm able to get up and do things, and do basic things like make breakfast and sit down and eat coffee and enjoy it, instead of just scarfing it down, like just hurry, eat, do this, get done. Because I'm very like checklist kind of person, I guess. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay, we got this at this time, this at this time, this at this time. And sometimes when it doesn't work out that way for me, I find myself like getting frustrated. I'm like, what is going on? It's supposed to be like this, I'm only
yeah.
supposed to eat from 12 to 1, or so, but yeah.
Good. I think that's the yeah, just highlighting that life is full of up and downs, and
Oh yeah.
also it's asking for help, because I think when I was in alcohol drug addiction, I never asked for help, even though I could tell that something wasn't right. And I think what you've done with the talking therapy and the medication is saying, look, I know something's not right. I definitely don't want to
Mm-hmm.
drink or drug, but I need help here. And
Mm-hmm.
again, we're humans. We're not built with an innate knowledge of how to emotionally regulate and grieve the death of
Right.
people that we've known our whole lives.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, the emotions, like I think that we hid them for so long with alcohols and drugs that we don't recognize them right away, or at
Yeah,
least I did.
yeah. And yeah, and again, if anyone is going through depression, it is normal in sobriety. I think
Yeah.
life. Well, the one thing I stand by, that life is tough, um,
Yeah.
and
But
that's why
you're tougher.
yeah, and that's why gratitude's so good, because I'm reminding myself of the things that I do have at the moment. I know things aren't always going to be where you necessarily want them, because life is full of up and downs. And that's
Yeah.
it. You just need to be sober and to be able to build coping mechanisms and tools that you can go to, like talking therapy, speaking
Mm-hmm.
to your doctor about what they can do, whether that's putting you on medication or even offering free counselling or whatever they might do.
Yeah.
So it shows a lot of self growth for you to be in the position you are, having to feel the feels and
Yeah.
go through depression as well, because it's not nice.
Yeah, it's not. And I mean, it takes time, and it's okay. Like some people need more time than others. Because some people can be depressed up to 6 months. Some people can be depressed up to 9 months. Just kind of depends. But I chose medication and talk therapy so that I can be able to not have those long spans of depression, because depression, like you said, it comes and goes in waves. And that's just life too itself.
So how do you feel it's a hard question to ask, because I've never had to go through it yet. I'm a lot more stoic about death now once I got sober, because I feel like I died a bit and I've sort of turned into a
Yeah.
new person. So I
Yeah.
understand death is here for all of us, but
Yeah.
equally I can't offer any advice or knowledge because it's not happened to my mum or dad yet. It
Yeah.
will do, and I know it will. I know it's coming. Um,
Yeah.
but it's hard for me to even say, or how are you grieving now? How far
Yeah.
down the process? Even saying that sounds weird. So I'll just let you
Yeah.
sort of.
So in yoga there's I don't know if you've heard, like or Carl Jung too also calls it the dark night of the soul, where you kind of have these experiences, and you kind of do a little bit of shadow work, or anything about that?
What is shadow work? Because when I was doing my publishing course, there were tons of books coming out about shadow work, and I was like, is that some sort of witchcraft that I don't know about?
No, no, it's not witchcraft. It's not witchcraft. It's just talking to the shadow aspect of your personality. So for example, um maybe somebody called you a name at 5 years old and it casted a shadow on your personality, and you didn't realize it. So you go back and like talk therapy or things like that, like you were talking about, and you can say, hey, when I was 5, I don't know exactly what happened to me, and then you can go through that, and it's called shadow work because you're gonna try
So
to find.
that sounds similar to inner child work that we
Yeah,
did at rehab. So we visit our 5 to 9 year old self and
yeah,
say, look, these things have happened. It's probably potentially because of this. Now I forgive you, or you just say to your
yeah.
younger self, everything's going to be all right. It doesn't define you, sort of thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly like that. But it goes up to all ages and all shadows. So, once you go through the dark night of the soul, um, you have to face all these shadows and all these things, and it's kind of feels like like a depression. It feels like all these different things. So, once you come out of the dark night of the soul, everything's better, everything's clearer, everything's brighter. In my process right now, I don't think I went through a dark night of the soul. I think I really had a lot of stress and um a lot of built up anxiety and stress, from everything that I was doing and everything that I was putting on top, and I was putting a lot of expectations on top of myself. But uh I'm working through the grieving, slowly, journaling, writing a lot, my feelings on paper, about my dad, about how I feel about him, about how I feel about my past relationships. Um, that's been helping tremendously. I didn't think it would help as much as it did, but journaling, because you can write whatever you want and no one is gonna read it but you, and so you can write your truth as it can possibly be. And it helped so much, grieving with my dad. um it helped a lot grieving with things that I didn't think I was grieving in. I had a loss of a child when I was younger, and I didn't even realize that didn't even grieve about that as well. So it's just it's like things come up that you don't think are going to come up, but they come
I,
up.
yeah, I guess from what you said is there's a lot of because I guess from my naivety, I was talking about grief as this process that has a timeline. But when you're saying about journaling, it's because different things will trigger you to start
Yes.
feeling grief again, because that will come in waves depending on it could be anything, people, places, and things. It could be
Yeah.
smells that remind you of your dad,
Right.
which then take you down a rabbit hole of thinking about various things, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And journaling for me helped me to realize the things that, not just with my dad, but with relationships that I had in the past, with friends, how I don't like to say no to people, how I sometimes can be a people pleaser, and things, just little things that you start to notice about yourself just by journaling. For me, that's what I've been doing lately to help me, plus talk therapy, and I've been on my medication. So I'm not very far in the process, but I am still working on it. I have maybe have like 2 months, 3 months, maybe like 2 months and a half right now, where I've been consistently coming back to life, I guess, if you want to call that.
And that's good. Like having been in suicidal depression, having 2 months is brilliant. So it shows you're getting the right balance and things, and also realizing that you needed to get the help, because the thing is, you could have sat in that depression forever.
Yeah, yeah, I could have.
And I think
And
that's
brought
important to link back to sobriety, is that you've been sober through all of this, which
yeah,
dealing with a lot of grief, and all the new things shows real courage and strength. Because
Yeah.
the easiest thing to do is to pick up a drink, and even
Yeah.
drugs these days, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
so
And it's very easy to pick up a drink here anywhere you go. Everywhere you go, there's like parties going on, there's this going on, this is Vegas, this is where the party starts and ends, I guess. But I still won't pick up a drink. I still won't do it. I don't know. My sobriety means a lot more to me. Like it really does.
yeah,
Than
and so just how have you, I guess, managed the sobriety along with the grief? Um, how are you keeping sober?
well, I am doing yoga. I am going to a gym here. It does hot Pilates and yoga, so I do that, and I continue to journal, and that's honestly all I've been doing so far. Just yoga and working out, getting back into the the nitty gritty of, you know, getting sweaty and 110 degrees outside doing hot yoga. I need
Yeah,
to do yoga again.
yes, definitely. I must admit, I haven't done it for ages, but I always bang on about how good it is for everyone, which it is.
It
Um,
is.
because there's a lot of things that you taught me because about certain moves and everything where you store emotions like grief, maybe. I don't know, something in the hips. Um,
Yeah. Oh, the hips. Yeah, that's the
oh, but
junk drawer.
sorry, you were saying about the grief you hold in your chest.
Yeah, we hold grief in our chest. We hold the world in our shoulders. We feel backstab sometimes. That's when you start to feel it in your back. Your hips hold jealousy and emotions that it doesn't know what to do with it. So that's when you open your hips sometimes like people start crying. Like I've had people cry in my yoga class and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? And they're like, oh no, I'm just very emotional. I haven't opened my shoulders like this before. And I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So yeah.
Nice. And in terms of AA and NA, do you still go to meetings?
I go to meetings, but I go online. I just watch them talk about the morning serenity prayer that they have and stuff like that. But I really don't attend anything yet, just because I am still trying to learn to get out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things you don't suddenly wake up one morning and that's it. You're walking out of the house doing all the things that you did 10 months ago,
Yeah.
a year ago. It's like a rebirth, I guess.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and yeah, again, it's just been brilliant to highlight. I think um, the ups
Yeah,
and downs of life are always going to be there, whether well, when we're sober. And it sounds like you've caught it before it's led down the path of the depression really taking over to the point where you might then potentially just think, fuck it, and the drink and drugs then potentially become an option. I'm very much like you. I'm very much sobriety
yeah,
for me is as important as oxygen. So along with breathing, I need to be sober
yeah.
because I'm as conscious of the bad times
Mm,
as I am the good times. So I want to savor the good times and just have my wits about me for when things aren't so rosy.
yeah, yeah. And there are good times. There are, and there are butterflies and rainbows and glitter days and those days are great. But there's tough days and there's days when you just need to push a little bit extra just to get out of bed. Like it's okay to not be okay at times, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
that's the one thing I give myself a bit of time and space for, because I think we're quite similar. We're always on the go. We're always
Yeah.
doing stuff. Um, but then some days I just feel flat.
Yeah.
And I just don't do anything, and that's fine. And then
Yeah.
the next day I get up and I'm doing a million things again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
um, and in terms of, I guess, just for any Americans who might be in Vegas, what's the sober community like in Vegas? What's on offer?
So there are so I do work for an agency called the Phoenix. I do remember telling you. And
Yeah,
they
they're
do,
they're quite big in America, aren't they? I've
yeah,
remember seeing their catalogue of exercises that they offer for free.
yeah. They're amazing. They before I went through the depression, I was working with them for about 2 years. So I have almost like 2.5 years with them now. So they have rock climbing, walking, social gatherings, arts and crafts. They have just so many rock climbing, especially for here in Vegas. They have so many different things, and I got to experience. I got to go to jail and teach yoga in jail. That was so awesome.
Wow.
That was yeah, it was the best. Like I like going to those classes, because the people there are just so receptive, and this is the one thing that they're gonna do out of their day that doesn't involve, being in a cell. Um, but these aren't bad people that I was going to go see. These are just people who had like minor, theft, drugs, alcohol, stuff like that,
Yeah.
drinking and driving and stuff like that. So I got to go to different rehabs as well, different sober living communities that are here in Las Vegas. But yeah, so the Phoenix is one of the recovery sobriety.
Is there a website for the Phoenix? Because it'd be good
Yes.
to highlight it.
Yes, it's called thephoenix.org.
Thephoenix.org. Okay,
Yeah,
I will remember that and I'll put it in the description of the videos
yeah,
and Spotify as well.
yeah. But they're great around here because they have events happening all throughout Las Vegas. So it's not just in one area, one spot. They have them all throughout the different communities in Henderson and in Summerlin. So
Oh wow.
that yeah, they're really cool. And then there's I like to go to, there's a spot called the meeting place here, the meeting space. And it holds meetings for NA and NAAA, CA, all of the A's basically.
Yeah.
Um, and that's where I would go to meetings. And that's the place that I like to go to. But there's so many other recovery places. There's, I mean, I don't want to give you the street names and stuff,
No.
but they're there.
Yeah. Well,
There's
people can always Google things, and it sounds like there is, contrary to what people might assume, actually quite a thriving sober community in probably the one place in the world that you wouldn't expect one, Vegas.
yeah, yes, exactly. And they have the Phoenix usually has a sobriety tent at festivals sometimes. So if you like to go to festivals and things and want to stay sober, they have a tent for
Oh,
sobriety people. Yeah, you
brilliant.
can get
I always see America and how they are with recovery, and I always think the UK is a bit behind in terms of having more things to do, like the Phoenix. The Phoenix is huge. Like, I remember going on the website and I was like, wow, that is
yeah,
that is massive.
yeah.
And I always think in the UK we do lack a bit of yeah, just a bit of recovery really outside of going to your AA or your CA meeting really.
Yeah. And they also do have classes online as well. If you don't want to like leave your house, you can download the app, and once you have the app on and register, they have like all the online stuff, and you can do it online at anytime you want to do it, whenever. So that like if you're up at 2 in the morning, you can do that at 2 in the morning, do a little bit of yoga or a little bit of Pilates or something that they offer there. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing about, I guess, yeah, some really personal things that you've been going through. Again, I think it was important that we had the chat beforehand, that you were so open and honest about it, because grief isn't something that I've necessarily gone through in sobriety.
Okay.
But it was good to speak to you, because having your experience of it um, will also help other people that go
Yeah.
through it in
Yeah.
sobriety. And I think that that's the aim, isn't it? To not turn to drink and drugs. Yes,
Hmm.
there's the binge eating that we've both related to,
Yeah.
but it's understanding that as a cross addiction, and knowing that you needed talking therapy and spoke to your doctor,
Yeah.
and now you're coming out the end of the depression, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
Um, and you can tell you're getting better when your yoga starts increasing.
Yeah, definitely. It's increasing, so it's getting there.
Yeah, real. Thanks very much.
Thank
We
you.
will finish it there, and then we'll catch up in a year or so again, and see where life's
Okay.
gone.
See where life takes us. Okay.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Moni.
All right. Bye.